Hi everybody, it's Peter Zalman's GriniFlix Adventure 8. Welcome to another video. Today's video is about the Nikon D700. And the question is it valuable? Is it worth getting now in 2025 and for 2026? How does it compare? What sort of results can you get out of this compared to modern cameras today? I've made this video a number of times over the years with the D700, and every time I do it, it's amazing. There's an incredible fan base for the D700 out there, or the Nikon lovers, and people keep on buying the Nikon D700 as a second camera for their main camera, even today. Let's find out why. What I've done is I've taken this camera out for a 1-hour shoot around the beach areas of Central Coast, and I'm going to compare it to the Nikon Z9. Yeah, this is the latest camera basically from Nikon, really high quality. It's got all the modern tech and modern software. Mirrorless camera versus a DSLR camera. The Nikon's D700 came out I think around 2009, so it's already 16 years old or so. It's a 12 megapixel camera. The Nikon Z9 I think is a 45 megapixel camera. I've made this video, I've also made another video, do megapixels matter? And I think the conclusion was, once you get over 12, it really probably doesn't matter so much, particularly, depending on how you present your photographs. If it's anything electronic, it really doesn't matter. But let's see whether that's really the case. Let's see whether you can tell the difference between the different cameras. The lens I'll be using is a 70-200 f2.8 lens. It's an F-mount lens. And this particular one is the 2.8 FLED. So this was the last of the 70-200s that Nikon made for the F-mount. And it's probably one of the best that Nikon made also. So I'll use this one on the D700 and also on the Z9 using the adapter, the F2FTZ adapter. That's a task for this video. From a functionality point of view, the software, one of the reasons why I like the Nikon software or Nikon digital cameras is that the software that drives the menu system and everything is pretty consistent between the older DSLR cameras and also the modern mirrorless cameras. And one of the things that the D700 was famous for was its autofocus, and they have a function called 3D. So if you want to capture action, the focus system would work really well in capturing that action, whether it be sport or wildlife, birds flying. So I'll try that. That will be my focusing technique in both cases for both the D700 as well as the Z9. The Z9 also has an equivalent focusing method, also called 3D, so we'll be consistent in using those. The method of focusing I use on both cameras is I use the back focus button. So I separate focus from the shutter release and use the focus button at the back. And I do that for both cases. And when I'm doing action photography, I have that on continuous focus. As soon as I press the button and keep my finger on the button, it does continuous focus. And then I can snap away as I like. I don't use motor drive on either cameras. I just basically see the action, anticipate the action, take the shot. One big difference between a modern camera and the old D700 is that the modern cameras are very responsive. You take the shot and the images goes on the memory cards instantly, so you can take shots as quickly as your finger can move, which is fast enough for me. But you do notice a little bit of a lag on the D700, but nevertheless it's still very good. I've selected a bunch of photographs. I have edited the photographs. The D700 is 12 megapixel file and the Z9 is 45. So what I've done is I've taken the raw file, I've edited them, and then I've exported the files in both cases and made a 24 megapixel JPEG. And the file size is also reduced down to about 4 megabytes. It's basically the end product that I'll be comparing. side by side and also showing you in this video. So I'll group them in two lots, but I won't label the apertures or shutter speeds or whatever, or even which camera it is. And you see whether which lot is, in your mind, is the Z9 and which lot is the D700. Leave comments after you watch the video, see whether you picked them apart, and I welcome your thoughts also on whether you got either or both cameras yourself. But let's have a look at some of these shots, maybe go into Lightroom and have a look in a bit more greater detail. Alright, jumping into Lightroom, I've got the two cameras here, the D700 and the Z9. I've taken about 270 photographs. 149 were with the D700 and 121 with the Z9. What I have then done is I've selected a bunch of photographs. So out of those 270, I've actually selected 52 photographs, 30 on the D700 and 22 on the Z9, so you can see them here. So these are the RAW files, and I've then converted these RAW files into JPEG files. So the D700 are 12 megapixel file, megapixel images, the Z9 are 45 megapixel images. When I've exported both of these into JPEG files, I've made them both 24 megapixel. So what I showed you initially was the ones that I've selected with 2 stars. So they went down to 14 shots, and they were 7 each, 7 of the D700 and 7 of the Z9. Here you go. These are the 14 shots that you saw. Did you pick the ones that were the D700 and the ones and the set that was the Z9? Let me know in the comments. All right, let's have a closer look at these. And what I've done is I've just selected a couple of shots to group and to compare. So like, for example, these two dogs. There we go. So we'll have a closer look at the two images. So on the left here, we've got the D700, and on the right, we've got the Z9. And both now 24 megapixel files, 24 megapixel images. And we can have a closer look at these two images. Now I'm zooming in at 100%. And I mean, look how the D700 stacks up here on the left. Both with the same lens. Both at 200mm focal length. The shutter speeds varied because of the time of day, and both at f2.8. I mean, the Z9 does an outstanding job, and also the D700. Let's have another look at another comparison here. So now we've got the again, still got the D700 on the left. Both at f2.8. My focus point on the D700 is back here. Both have been edited slightly to increase the contrast or whites or blacks, but basically the color hasn't been changed. And I've been using daylight white balance, I think, in both shots. But you know, you get incredible images again in both cases, I think. All right. So here now we've got action. So we're using the 3D continuous focus back focus button. So to be able to separate the bird from the background here at shooting, now panning with a 200mm lens focal length, I thought this was a pretty good shot. And then also over here with the Z9 capturing the action of the surfer also. So both results are very good with the focusing technique, as well as the camera's being able to autofocus like that. Alright, so back to the two images. In this image here, I think this is where you can really, the way I've taken this shot, you can see that the Z9 seems to be a sharper picture. And whether that was my focusing point, possibly my focusing point here is just a little bit forward of this lady and the dog. You can sort of see in the sand here. So that possibly is why the lady here is slightly out of focus compared to nailing the focus here exactly on the people. So I'll put it down to that. Otherwise, I suspect it would have been pretty close to the mark. And then this action shot again. So this is 1/2000th of a second. This one's the Z9's 1/2000th of a second, and the D700 1/2500th of a second. Both f2.8. Similar ISOs. The minimum ISO on this D700 is actually 200. And then when we zoom in, I mean, these little swallows, they're the size of your palm, and they're flying past you, within say 4 or 5 meters. That's phenomenal speed. So the pan rate is incredible. So to get that action, I thought was pretty impressive. I was impressed with that. And then to get this silhouette with the D700 with the Z9, I thought also was a great image. But again, the detail in both cameras is really incredible. Yeah, so I think personally the D700 still stacks up today in 2025. Going into 2026, ideal second camera. If not, it's just an excellent camera to be using even in modern times. Did you pick the set? Did you pick the set that was a D700 and pick the set that was a Z9? Yeah, pretty close. And when I went through the photo, the shots for the D700 were taken midday, and the shots for the Z9 were taken late afternoon, early evening. So it's not exactly apples for apples. But the gist was get a bunch of decent shots within an hour and see what I can do. So that was a personal challenge. I personally liked some of the shots I showed you, and hopefully you'll feel the same way. I welcome your comments on that. But having taken the two different lighting situations, what do you think? How does the D700 stack up? Comment. I welcome your thoughts. Personally, I think the D700 still does it. It still does it for me. And with cameras now coming out with 100 megapixel, the Hasselblad, for example. But when you start taking all the things into consideration, the lenses you can get, the weight, the menu system, and the megapixel, the D700 is such a bargain. And then when you buy some of the old vintage lenses, like this 85 1.4, and there's so many of these old vintage Nikon lenses available, and the D700 is compatible with that, as well as the Z9. Yeah, so pick up an old lens, whether it be an autofocus lens or a manual lens for the D700, and for probably under $1,000, you can sort of kit yourself out with some of the best lenses that Nikon have made over the years with this body, the D700. Yes, well, what do you think? If you like this video, then give it a thumbs up. That's how you support the video. If it's the first time to my channel, you haven't already subscribed, then press subscribe, press notifications so you'll be notified when the next video comes out. I am affiliated with a number of companies, and if you like some discounts on photographic gear, as well as lithium power banks and power stations, electric bikes, all sorts of stuff, go to my website, adventure8.com.au, go to the shopping tab, and you'll find all the companies I'm associated with and the type of discounts that you can get being a viewer or a subscriber on my channel. Thanks again for watching. I look forward to seeing you on the next video. Cheers. Bye.